Yankee Sarcone. I run Spainguru.es, and this is the free Spainguru Spanish Non-Lucrative Visa webinar. Today is Monday, July 14th, 2025. And the way I have structured this webinar is a timeline before the application, during the application, and after the approval. We're going to talk about definitions, the consulates, third parties. If you enter Spain as a tourist, when you become a resident, we're going to talk about some tax considerations, and then we're going to go deep into NLV eligibility and the most important requirements and documentation. Then we're going to talk about the process, timing, application process, and after the approval, how you have to arrive to Spain, the steps that you need to follow once you arrive to Spain, if you pretend to renew your non-lucrative visa, requirements, etc., long-term residence if you plan to stay longer in Spain, citizenship, Spanish passport application, and transition to work permit. Remember that the content of this webinar is for information purposes only and is not legal advice. The requirements listed here are not official. Please check your specific consulate's requirements. A little bit about Spainguru. Our objective is facilitating relocation process for English-speaking foreigners to Spain since 2014. We have amazing reviews online, so you are in good hands. You can use Spainguru for absolutely free. You have a weekly newsletter every single Monday, a YouTube channel with almost 1,000 videos uploaded, a blog with more than 1,700 articles, and a huge community with an aggregated total of 150,000 members, where the top non-lucrative visa dedicated group is the top group out there with 22,000 members, and I highly recommend you joining today. If you go on Spainguru.es, you will find also that you can join the webinars, you can join the newsletter, but also a Move to Spain checklist. It is a fantastic tool, in my opinion. Just show you how you can use it, because it is a fantastic checklist here that you can use, which starts 12 months before you move to Spain. And it goes into different stages, like 6 months before, 3 months before, after you arrive to Spain. So in each of the stages, you can see step-by-step suggested things that you need to do, in my humble opinion. So it is a very clear way to see how you can move to Spain. This is not only for non-lucrative visa, but for any kind of visa for a non-European who pretends to move to Spain. So let's go back to the presentation. And of course, if you need professional help, you can find immigration experts, tax advisors, financial planners. Out of all this list, the minimum ones I will engage with would be immigration experts and tax advisors. I would definitely recommend engaging with those two, because it's important that you have your immigration things and your tax matters solved, and you have a clear pathway and also a long-term strategy if you pretend to stay in Spain for several years before you even take the decision of moving to Spain. But of course, you have also financial planners that have personally vetted, and also services that you would need if you apply for this visa, like NLV compliant health insurance, medical certificates, from translations, apostille services in the US and UK, and many more services. Now, let's start with before the application. First of all, what is the Spanish non-lucrative visa? Spanish non-lucrative visa is a Spanish visa for non-EU citizens who can financially support themselves and who don't need to work in Spain. In Spain, very important. This type of visa is defined by two laws. The first law is the main organic law, which is more important than the second by law, called Reglamento de Extranjería. The main law is the Ley Orgánica for 2000, and the regulation of this law is the Reglamento de Extranjería that recently changed and took effect on May 20th, 2025. Okay, but it's important that you understand that the reglamento, the bylaw, is below in hierarchy than the main law. And this has very deep implications that you will learn in this webinar. Now, let's talk about consulates in the US, UK, Canada, and Australia. Okay, it's important that you understand that you can't apply for the non-lucrative visa from within Spain, like the digital nomad visa. You have to do it from a consulate abroad. And in which consulate you need to be legal resident within the jurisdiction that Spanish consulate serves. For example, if you live in Atlanta, Georgia, I see someone connected from Atlanta, the jurisdiction is the Miami consulate, okay? And if you go to Spainguru.es / Spanish non-lucrative visa, or for example, I will share you my screen here. If we go to Spainguru here, and we have guides and blog, visa guides, and we go to non-lucrative visa guides, NLV consulates, yes. And here you can find a dedicated page for every consulate. Why is this interesting? For example, I'll go to Los Angeles or Miami. Yes, we were mentioning Miami before. The cool thing about this is like you not only have the links to the official requirements, but also you have all the first-hand experiences that I gather from social media. Okay, so people who are applying for the non-lucrative visa, they share their experiences and I upload them to Spainguru.es. So this is very, very important because every consulate is different and you need to be and stay on top of the news because sometimes they come out with requirements that are not even published online or on BLS. In the case of Miami, they work with BLS. We're going to talk about that very, very soon. What is BLS? BLS is a third party. It's a private company from India. It's a huge company with operations in 66 countries, and their job is to process visas for other countries, okay? Among them, Spain. Not all the consulates, Spanish consulates, deal with BLS International for the non-lucrative visas. For example, New York City Consulate doesn't work with BLS, but such is the case of Miami or Los Angeles or Houston now and San Francisco, okay? They all use BLS International, or all the UK consulates use BLS International, right? So when I say that you have to talk with your consulate or contact with your consulate, sometimes really you will not be in contact with your consulate, but with BLS International. You will have to attend an appointment at BLS International offices in the city of your consulate, and you will have to deal with them for your non-lucrative visa application. So always make sure to understand whether your consulate is using BLS International as a processor of your visa. Now, we're going to talk about immigration status to Spain. So it's important to understand what the Schengen area is. The Schengen area is a group of 28 European countries that is internally borderless. Okay, so if you cross France to Spain, you will not have a passport control, except in exceptional circumstances that happen quite often. So some people say like, oh, can I go to Schengen area and the Spanish authorities will not know? Okay, normally not. It's not very enforceable, but sometimes there are border controls, like for example in the Olympic Games or certain weeks, etc. Actually, there is information online. If you want to know if there are going to be border controls internally into Schengen, there is information online that actually tell you that when those happen. Now, we said we're going to talk about visa requirements or immigration status to Spain. First of all, tourist visa eligibility. British, US, Canadian, Australian citizens, for example, can stay in Spain and other Schengen countries for up to 90 days within a 6-month period, a rolling period, without needing a tourist visa. After this limit, you need to get out of the Schengen area, okay? Fly away this area, right? And then you start getting your clock back to you. You earn some more days that you can go back into the Schengen area. Now, some nationalities require a Schengen visa to enter as tourists. For example, the Philippines, okay? And then if you want to stay longer into any of the Spanish member states, you, longer than 90 days, okay, you must secure a residence via a temporary or long-term visa, okay? So normally you will obtain the non-lucrative visa, okay, at a consulate outside of Spain, all right? And that visa will be stick to your passport, will have a certain validity period that now changed from 90 days to 1 year, okay? And once you are in Spain, you will be required to obtain your residency card that will, let's say, replace your visa that is stick to your passport. The residency card will be done at a police station or foreign office where they take your fingerprints, they take your photo, okay? And you will have a plastic card that proves your residency status in Spain, and then it will be called the non-lucrative residency, not the visa anymore. The visa is only on your passport, okay? And once you have the residency, your visa validity expires, okay? Now, the non-lucrative visa is a temporary residency because normally you would have it, if you renew it, for 5 years. So any residency in Spain that is for less than 5 years is considered to be temporary. If you obtain a residency that is longer than 5 years, will be considered to be a long-term residency, which is the previous step to Spanish citizenship in a way, okay? Now, citizens from European countries like European Union countries or associate countries like Switzerland, Norway, Iceland, and non-European passport holders who are married to these citizens don't need to obtain a non-lucrative visa, for example. Okay, if you move to Spain and you're an EU passport holder or married to one that holds one, you can just get a community family card, okay, or as a European Union passport holder, you can just request your residency in Spain, okay? Now, if you plan to retire in Spain without generating any income, working in Spain, etc., if you're not going to pay for your social security in Spain, you will have to prove that you have certain amount of funds, but those are much less than a non-lucrative visa. You will have work permit in Spain. Your residency will be valid for 5 years without prior renewals. So it is much, much better in this case. So if you have the possibility to obtain an European passport, or your spouse can have this possibility, maybe it's interesting to also go that pathway instead of going for the non-lucrative visa, okay? If you're not in this situation, logically, the non-lucrative visa is a very valid pathway. Now let's talk a little bit about some tax considerations. And the first and most important thing is tax residence in Spain, okay? What happens when you become a tax resident in Spain? You will be liable to pay tax on your worldwide income and potentially on the net value of your assets anywhere in the world. You will become a tax resident in Spain if any of these three conditions happen. First and most important, if you spend over 183 days in Spain within a year, you will become a Spanish tax resident. And the year is a calendar year from January 1st to December 31st. The days don't need to be consecutive, and your immigration status doesn't matter, okay? If you're physically present in Spain, that days count towards your Spanish tax residency. Second condition is if your main economic activity or primary source of income is from Spain, regardless of time spent in the country. And the third one is if your family lives in Spain, okay? You could be deemed to be a tax resident in Spain. A little bit about taxes. The first and most important is the income tax. You pay on June 30th, 2025, for example, you would pay all your income in 2024, worldwide income, okay? And it is a progressive tax system that ranges from 19% to 47%, okay? $1 million question and round numbers for illustrative purposes. People say like, oh my God, if I make 100K a year, I would fall into the 5th tax bracket. You can see there on the right, there's a table with those progressive tax rates. And people say like, if I make 100K, I'm gonna pay 45%, okay, of my income. It's not really like that. It is much less. It is also high, but it's not 45%. It's gonna be around 36 to 37% because you would pay, let's say, average or a median of the previous brackets before. Then you also have to submit a form called 720, which is your foreign asset reporting. This is done on March 31st, and you need to disclose your overseas assets, okay, by categories. For example, one category is bank accounts. If all your bank accounts outside of Spain, the deposits in those bank accounts are over 50,000 euros, you have to disclose the existence of all the bank accounts. For example, if you have 10 bank accounts with 5,000 euros, you will have to disclose those 10 bank accounts because the total category is 50,000 euros. And then you will have to file this 720 only if there are variations of more than 20,000 euros or closures of your assets. Then there is the regional wealth tax, okay? And it will depend where you move in Spain because each of the comunidades autónomas, there are 17 in Spain, have their own rules for the wealth tax. It's a regional tax, but then there is a national wealth tax called the solidarity tax that kicks in at much higher thresholds, starting at 3 million euros with allowances and deductions, okay? That it doesn't matter where you move in Spain. The most favorable regions in Spain for the wealth tax are Madrid, Andalusia, Cantabria, Extremadura, and now Valencia raised the threshold to 1 million euros, okay? Now, solidarity tax we already mentioned, but remember that Spain has double taxation agreements with the US, UK, Canada, Australia, and many other countries in order to avoid the person moving to Spain to be taxed twice on the same category. Doesn't mean that you're going to pay less taxes, okay? If you pay, but you shouldn't be paying twice for the same category, okay? It's also very important that you understand that regional rules and your specific situation have a very strong influence in the final taxes and your tax liability. So it's very, very, very important that you consider engaging with a tax advisor, okay? Now, if you want to know more about taxes, make sure to join my bi-weekly free Spanish tax overview, okay? It is absolutely free, the same as this webinar, and you also receive a recording after it's finished, and you can ask all your questions also during the Q&A session. I think tomorrow is the next tax, if I'm not wrong, the next tax webinar. Now, let's go into non-lucrative visa. Now that we've finished with the main considerations, okay, some context about moving to Spain and everything. Now let's go deep into the non-lucrative visa. We're going to talk about the documentation needed for the application. And this is a summary. Always check your consulates and or the BLS website with the official requirements. First, they will ask you that you say where you plan to move in Spain, an address in Spain. Some consulates, most of the consulates are not strict about this, and it's enough with you disclosing where you plan to move, like the province, like Seville, Valencia, Malaga, Madrid, those things. But some consulates are strict in their interpretation, and they will want you to prove that you have a place to stay once you arrive in Spain. And many people are booking through booking.com or Airbnb or other websites apartments in advance, even before going to Spain, which is quite risky. Okay, and showing those rentals. Okay, some people say they were accepted with a 3-month rental, but depending on the consulate, there are variations. I have interviewed Ainhoa Manero from Sterna Abogados. She's a very experienced immigration lawyer. I highly recommend her. You can contact her through Spainguru.es about this requirement of showing rental contracts. And she says that she never does this with her customers because it is, let's say, an interpretation that is nowhere in the regulation, nowhere in the law, that several consulates are applying, and it is absolutely out of the way, and it's not something they're putting at risk people by pushing them to get rental contracts without even knowing that their visa will be granted. So if you want to watch that video, send me an email to hello@spainguru.es and I can send you the link so that you can watch that video. Second thing, address in the country of residence. We mentioned that you can't apply for the NLV from anywhere in the world. You have to do it from the consulate where you're a legal resident within its area of serving or area of jurisdiction, okay? So you need to understand what is your consulate and or your BLS office, right? You need to prove sufficient financial means to support yourself and or dependents, have comprehensive health insurance from a company authorized to operate in Spain, or if you're from the UK and you're a UK retiree, instead of having a private health insurance, you can enroll in the Spanish public healthcare system via the S1 form that you start applying in the UK and you finish your process once you move to Spain. Therefore, you don't need a private health insurance unless you want, of course, instead of the having access to the public healthcare system in Spain. You will have to show a clean criminal background check, a medical certificate. If you're planning to move with spouses, dependent children, you will have to get new marriage certificate, new birth certificates, and in most consulates now and growing, you will have to prove that you won't engage in any work or professional activities in Spain under the non-lucrative residence. Not always, but many consulates are asking for a letter of intent, and sometimes it would be necessary that you provide this letter of intent in order to explain your finances and your situation, because sometimes there's so much paperwork and it is a bit complicated to understand. So it is helpful to provide or submit a letter of intent, even if they don't require it. And if applicable, as I said, you will need to submit several other documentations like marriage and birth certificates. If you're moving with kids, sometimes they will ask you for school enrollment. And as we said, rental contracts, which is quite controversial, and taxes, for the last year or last 3 years. And if you're applying via BLS, they will request a photo that most of the time they will take it in the office itself. Of course, you will have to pay your fees. Everyone has to pay their fees, and etc., etc. Okay, so this is a summary of the things that you would need to submit. Okay, if you want to watch videos where Ainhoa Manero from Sterna Abogados answers the top 55 frequently asked questions about this process, you can find them on Spainguru.es. 55 questions and answers by an experienced immigration lawyer. Now, let's go deeper into each one of these requirements. First, financial requirements, 2025. You need to prove sufficient funds in order to get your non-lucrative visa. How much money do you need to show? And remember, it can be savings, 100%, or it can be passive income, regular passive income, or a combination of savings and passive income, okay, in order to prove your financial requirements. The main applicant has to have 400% of the IPREM index 2025, and each dependent 100% of the IPREM index in 2025. Okay, we're going to talk about the IPREM index, but right now you can watch on the right, you have the table. You can see, for example, a couple is 28,800 euros for the main applicant, plus a dependent is 36,000 euros. Okay, this is the minimum threshold to get your NLV as of 2025. As we said, it can be savings and or passive income, and passive income can be pension withdrawals, rental income, but be careful with rental income because, again, I recently got opinions by different lawyers, okay, experienced in this process, and many consulates are not liking rental income because they consider this type of income a bit unsafe because tenants can stop paying you anytime. So they would prefer that you let time pass, you get that income, you save it, and you submit your non-lucrative visa application as savings. They prefer that. Then as passive income that is also accepted is dividends, for example, etc., etc. Okay. Now, how do you prove the financial situation? Providing bank statements, okay, and documentation from your bank wherever you have those funds. Could be the US, UK, Canada, Australia, or anywhere else, in fact, okay? Some consulates will ask for tax returns, and something that's very important, you will need double the amount for the renewal of the non-lucrative visa in most provinces in Spain where you renew. And double there, it's between asterisks because it is not really double in 1 year, it is double in 2 years. The thing is, when you initially apply for the non-lucrative visa, you need to prove to Spain that you can maintain yourself for the next year, because after 1 year, you will need to renew your visa. The thing is that when you renew your visa, it's going to be for a 2-year period. So then for the renewal, you will have to prove that you have money to sustain yourself for the next 2 years. Therefore, it is double the amount, but also you have double the time to get that income. If you have applied with savings and your funding requirements are with savings, then of course it's going to be double the amount because you don't have passive income. But if you have recurrent passive income, it is the recurrent passive income in that 2-year period. Okay, so it is not really double the amount. And of course, the different provinces will be having different requirements, but most of the provinces will require you to prove double the amount in 2 years' time. Now, we said we're going to talk about the IPREM index. So it's important that you understand that financial requirements for the NLV may change, okay? And once a year, this index may change or may stay the same as previous years. It will depend on political agreements because the IPREM index is within the national budget of Spain, and the national budget of Spain needs to be agreed by the government with other parties. In the last 2 years, 2023, 2024, and now 2025, there was no agreement, so the IPREM index stayed the same. But the moment in which will be an agreement, it will be for sure for an increase of this index. So imagine that now the 100% of IPREM is 7,200 euros, okay, 100%, which is the same as required for dependents. If it goes up only 50 euros per month, okay, it will be 7,800 euros for a dependent and 31,200 euros for a main applicant. And this can happen anytime during the next 5 years. So imagine you get your NLV now and you renew your visa, but the renewals will be updated with the new IPREM index requirements. So you have to budget accordingly and assume that potentially you will need to show more of, there's a higher minimum threshold for this non-lucrative visa. Also, a lot of let's say, paranoia, I would say, came out lately because many consulates started to demand that you submit more documentation in order to prove your financial situation. What type of documentation? This is a screenshot from the London Consulate in English, official requirements. Basically, full bank name and address. A lot of people are reluctant to show this because they think they're going to get their IDs, they say someone will steal their ID and bank account. So a lot of people don't like to put in the same document their bank account number and their full name, okay? But basically what the consulate wants is that you understand that it's really you who is the owner of the money that you say that you have in your account. Basically, they want to match everything so that there's no fraud, right? Then full account identification, right? You will need to show that, the number, the bank address, your full name, etc. All this, officially, account opening date and closing date if applicable. So they want to see for how long this account was existing. And also two very controversial things, two types of certificates. The first one is the balance as of December 31st of the previous year. Okay, so how much money you had on December 31st last year. If you're applying in 2025, they want to know December 31st, 2024, and the average monthly balance for the previous year, which is, of course, very, very controversial because many banks outside of Spain don't have this type of certificates, whereas the banks in Spain, it is quite common to get these certificates. For example, I have uploaded this. This is my account. This is BBVA. I have this account. And this, for example, this certificate that you can just download from your app just says like Bruno Bianchi is the owner of this account, and this is the number of the account. And it has a wet ink stamp on it, even though, of course, this is a PDF that I receive on my email. You know, the banks provide, let's say, a JPEG or image of a wet ink stamp. And this is what the consulates love to see. And the legislators are thinking that anyone else in the world can provide, because they think maybe that all the banks in the world act the same or provide the same types of certificates than in Spain. But it is not, of course, the case. But this doesn't mean that if your bank don't supply those certificates, you are not able to get your non-lucrative visa, okay? And we go pretty much in depth into this in two videos that I just recorded with Ainhoa, one 3 weeks ago and one last week, about all this documentation. But basically, long story short, I highly recommend you watching this video and all the non-lucrative visa videos that I upload. But this one in particular, basically what she says is like you can calculate your own balance, okay, and then print an Excel, notarize that, okay, make it look official, and submit this and say that your bank doesn't provide the average balance, monthly balance of your account, and you will be fine. Okay, because if you go to court because they deny you because that you didn't provide that specific document, and you show that you provided this information, okay, and it's official, and you say like it's impossible for me to supply it, but I did what I could to supply it, okay, they will say that you're right. Okay, this is basically what she says, right? So you have to be calm. Don't worry about it too much, okay? But and do what you can in order to comply with the new certificates that the consulates are asking for. Another $1 million question: can I work remotely for non-Spanish companies? All right, and this is the situation. Okay, so I'm gonna again quote Ainhoa for this. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an immigration lawyer, and this is not legal advice, but basically the story is as follows. The non-lucrative visa started when the remote work was not a thing. They didn't have this in mind, and the text is quite ambiguous. The text of the law says that you cannot work in Spain, but it doesn't say anything about working for non-Spanish companies on a remote basis. So it is a gray area, and there is a Supreme Court ruling saying that someone working for outside a company is right. Okay, so it is a very defensible position. I know a lot of people who are working remotely under the non-lucrative residence. Many of them, you can see them online on YouTube. In fact, they pay the worldwide income taxes because they became Spanish tax residents, but they don't pay Social Security in Spain. And when they renew their visas, they have to apply with passive income and or savings and not use their active income as proof of funding. Okay, but they can live perfectly in Spain under non-lucrative residence, even if they work remotely. This is a gray area. I'm not saying you have to do it. I'm not recommending it. Now there's that digital nomad visa that is more suitable for this situation, okay? But this is the situation now, and this would be the answer. The short answer is, can I work remotely for non-Spanish companies under non-lucrative residence? The short answer would be yes. Yes, you can. But when you apply for it at the consulate, you cannot give the slightest doubt to any consulate that you are working or have the plans to work, or you have the plans to, after a sabbatical year without working, have the thoughts of coming back to work, because you will be denied. There's straight denial. Even if you have the right to say in your letter of intent, yes, I want to get the non-lucrative visa to take a sabbatical year without working in Spain for 1 year, and then I plan to go back to work. If you say that, you will be denied immediately, okay? So it's absolutely insane how strict consulates can be about this, okay? However, there are exceptions, and consulates are very different. They're like different countries, different planets among themselves in the way that they apply their interpretations of the rules. The case of Edinburgh is crazy, okay? they say you can work and apply for the non-lucrative visa as long as your work is a special type of work. And there was a Spainguru community member who raised awareness on this situation, and this family applied. The husband was working at an oil rig in the Northern Sea and got the non-lucrative visa for himself and for all the family, and he just flies back every 15 days to the UK, to Scotland in this case, to work. And also I have asked lawyers who are experienced with the visa, and they got non-lucrative visas for people working as pilots, for example, like long-haul pilots that, for example, they are working in the US only 15 days per month, or even less. They fly to the US, they do a couple of long-haul flights, and then go back to Spain, and they enjoy their non-lucrative visa. So if you're in this situation, it's not that you cannot get your non-lucrative visa, but I would highly recommend you going with experienced lawyers that you can find on spainguru.es. Okay. So as you can see, it is very nuanced, the situation about non-working with a non-lucrative visa. It's very nuanced. It is a gray area. You have to be very careful how you word your submission at a consulate, because it could be a denial, even if it's your right to, and you want to say the truth and you want to be honest about your plans in the future, but maybe you will be sharing too much. This is what I'm saying. Now let's talk about the private health insurance requirements. You need to have healthcare coverage, like comprehensive healthcare coverage. As I said, if you're a UK retiree, you can use the S1 form instead. Otherwise, you need to get a private health insurance, and that insurance policy needs to be compliant. The conditions to be compliant is that absolutely no co-payments. In several consulates, they will also deny you if you have reimbursement clauses. So be careful with that. There are health insurances there that they have reimbursement clauses. People are recommending them, but absolutely, I don't feel safe recommending that health insurance policy because it has reimbursement and there's been denials. Specifically, Houston writes it. It is not exactly the perfect, like the very specific wording, but they mention reimbursement as a possible denial cause. Okay, but personally, I wouldn't take the risk. It shouldn't have waiting periods. It should have full coverage. It means that you should be covered for anything, any problem. But there are nuances as well with the full coverage condition. We're going to talk about that. And normally, you will have to pay a full year in advance because all these companies, they will require you to have paid a full year in advance in order to issue a certificate of coverage in Spanish with the right wording, okay, that you need in order to be accepted at the Spanish consulate. And yeah, basically that's also another frequently asked question. Should I pay a full year in advance? In most cases, yes. There's an option also. Some people have been living in Spain. They have a Spanish IBAN bank account, and many of these companies will accept monthly payments and still issue certificate of coverage if you have a Spanish bank account in advance. That could also be the case. Frequently asked questions. Are my medicines covered? Not with a private health insurance. You will have to pay retail price. Good news are that those medicines are much cheaper than in the UK and in the US, especially in the US. What should be the health insurance start date? There's no right answer to this, but the most common safe scenario is, if I'm going to give you an example. If you want to enter Spain on September 15th, if you start your health insurance coverage on September 1st, you're fine. Okay, because that will cover you for the next year, and that's what the consulate wants to see. Okay, a lot of people argue that you need to be covered at the time of submission, but sometimes you get problems because after submission you have like 3 months sometimes of processing time, and then they will say that you're not covered for the full year once you get your visa, right? So you wanted to be a good boy by getting your start date earlier, and then that shoots back to you, unfortunately. So you need to go with experienced brokers who know this process, who are used to deal with the different consulates in order to get the right timings and potentially the possibility to extend the start date of your policy. Okay, of course, on Spainguru.es you can find those experienced agents. Now, are there health insurance for older than 75 years of age? Yes, there are. They're expensive. You need to understand this. Linking to the full coverage condition, many times they will exclude things, but they will be able to give you a compliant policy with a right certificate of coverage in Spanish so that you obtain your non-lucrative visa. Okay, companies that in the back of my head that have this kind of policies are DKV and Adeslas. Okay, I also heard Salus as well. but you need to shop around. You need to engage with several brokers and do your due diligence and get your information with your specific circumstances. Okay, I see a lot of people asking in the groups like, I'm 58, my wife is 64. How much will it be? What is the health insurance company that you recommend? Honestly, all the health insurances are companies are more or less the same in terms of coverage or quality. Okay, but you need to engage with someone who can give you a proper non-binding quote so that you understand what will apply to you depending on when you move as well and your pre-existing conditions in order to get the right answers. Okay, what if I have pre-existing conditions? Okay, so this is circling back with the full coverage condition there. So it is possible that depending on how serious the pre-existing conditions are, you don't get coverage. For example, if you had a cancer diagnosis within the last 5 years, it is very possible that you don't find a private health insurance company that will cover you, unfortunately. Okay, you need to wait for 5 years until you get that coverage, right? It could be, okay? It could also be that your pre-existing conditions are not as serious, okay? And you are somewhere in the middle, in the mid-ground, okay? For example, you have high blood pressure. Most companies will be able to provide you with a compliant policy, but excluding things related to high blood pressure, okay? Which is controversial because you should have full coverage, but the situation is that many companies will be able to provide you with a certificate of coverage in Spanish. You will be able to obtain a non-lucrative visa, but still you will have some exclusions. Therefore, when you move to Spain and you have problems related to those pre-existing conditions, you will have to pay out of pocket for that treatment, okay? Until potentially, this is a pathway that you can go, is you can join the public healthcare system via something called the Convenio Especial, paying, okay, into the public healthcare system, and that will include coverage for pre-existing conditions, okay? And this is related to the next questions. Can I pay into the Spanish public healthcare system? Yes, after 1 year of residence in Spain, you will pay 60 euros if you're younger than 65, 157 euros if you're older than 65, okay? And but it takes weeks, if not months, to have effective access to the public healthcare system via the Convenio Especial. Therefore, you shouldn't count on it for the first renewal of your non-lucrative visa, okay? Be careful with that. It's better to overlap having private health insurance and then access to your public healthcare system, but not have any gaps in between in which you are not covered, because that is a very common reason of denial for the renewal of the visa. Can I use my current health insurance from the UK and USA? Short answer is, if it's NLV compliant, yes. Long answer is, I highly don't recommend it doing so, because you can find so many reasons to be denied, okay? Like the agent reviewing in the consulate the type of visa, the type of health insurance that you have, can see reimbursement clauses potentially, maybe co-payment clauses there, maybe it considers it to be a travel health insurance, okay? Maybe the certificate of coverage is not in Spanish, and it has to be sworn translated several pages, like 40 pages at 40 euros per page. The wording maybe is not right, okay? So there's so many things that can happen if you use your US UK policy that I personally wouldn't recommend anyone taking that risk, okay? People talk about Signa Global Gold, and sometimes it worked, etc. I don't know, up to you. In my opinion, the Spanish companies are very affordable, okay? Very affordable, and you have like a very streamlined process via the people who know how to deal with non-lucrative visa applicants, okay? Can I apply with the UK S1 form if I'm a UK retiree? Yes. Do I need a Spanish bank account? No, but if you have one, potentially you can benefit for paying monthly instead of yearly. Can I pay on a monthly basis? As I said, only if you have a Spanish bank account, in my opinion. Can there be reimbursements? It's a very gray area. I wouldn't take the risk. Will I get a refund if I'm denied? That depends on the policy that you are acquiring, okay? Sometimes you compare policies and you say like, wow, this policy is amazing, it's fantastic, it's incredible, this is the one I want. But the cancellation clause sucks, okay? It has no refund clause, okay? Or it's partial refund clause with conditions. For example, I will only refund you 50% of your yearly payment only if your non-lucrative visa was denied because of the health insurance, and not only because of any other reasons, okay? So you need to read the policy, and you need to understand the cancellation clause very well, because the best policy out there could happen that it doesn't have the best cancellation clause. If that's important to you, it's that if that is one of your priorities, make sure to sign a full refund, no questions asked cancellation clause. Okay. Next question. What are the top companies? As I said, in my 21 years in Spain, I used 3 companies. Okay. I used Adeslas, Mafre, and Caser. I think Caser, that was the third one. All of them were the same. Okay, that's my opinion. All right. It's not like, oh, this Sanitas is better, Assis is better. Like, you have horror stories for all of them, and you have like great stories for all of them. Okay, so my opinion, it's important that you understand, like, if you're moving to a certain area and you have certain needs, okay, or you need specific doctors, okay, then you go and investigate what there is in your specific area where you plan to move for the different companies. But the truth is that they change also the quality of their coverage over time, because some hospital negotiates not to be part of this health insurance the following year or this other year, so it is quite dynamic. So really, I wouldn't get too crazy about it. Okay, I would just check the conditions and the coverage of the health insurance, investigate what the cuadro médico or the doctors in the specific area where you're moving, see that they have good coverage, and that's it. Then the comparing prices and the conditions, refund conditions, etc. Okay, so you have Adeslas, ASA, Sanitas, Asisa, Salus, AXA, DKV, Caser, Mafre, and many more companies who can provide you compliant health insurance policies. But remember that all these companies have also policies that are not compliant. So you need to be very, very sure that they're selling you a compliant health insurance policy. The best way to do it at no extra cost to you is to use a very experienced broker or agent who deals with these companies for the specific use case of an NLD applicant. Now, if size matters, Adeslas is by far the largest one. Then you have Sanitas, Asisa, DKV, Mafre, etc. Okay, about 26% of the Spanish population has private health insurance, and this is also my case. And this is a slide that, it was something isolated, but in Washington, D.C., the BLS office, they wanted to sell applicants travel health insurance, and themselves, they were saying via their BLS website and also via the consulate that travel health insurance was not going to be accepted. This is a glitch. This probably they want to sell you this for some reason, okay? But definitely don't buy that insurance thinking that will be compliant with your application. If you want to deal at no extra cost to you, I think the best option in the market, Adeslas is the top, best quality per money ratio. You can engage with Carlos Blanco, who is also an expert immigration lawyer. You can find him on Spainguru.es, and he has also something very unique thing is that he can extend the start date of your policy to meet the timings of your non-lucrative visa application. So he's also an expert immigration lawyer. He also helps with the process of non-lucrative visa, but he will know all the things about this process, and you're going to be in great hands. Here I have some screenshots you can read later on in the recording of people who've been with him, but he's a very famous and very recognized professional that I have been recommending for more than 3 years already, only to get extremely great reviews. Now we're moving towards the medical certificate, okay? It has nothing to do with the health insurance, nothing to do, except that it's related to health. But basically the medical certificate is a one-page document that says that you don't have infectious diseases like smallpox, yellow fever, these type of things. HIV is not part of this, okay? The list of illnesses is listed in a protocol called the Protocol of 2005, okay? Here you say like yellow fever, viral hemorrhagic fevers, Ebola, this kind of stuff, okay? It has to have a specific wording. You have to be very careful, and the doctor should not change the wording because it can lead to denial. If they add things like "to the best of my knowledge," no, it has to have the specific knowledge, the specific wording. Sorry. The best and safest thing is to download the template that your own consulate provides. Okay, sometimes the templates of this document are only in English. If they are only in English, you will need to sworn translate them, okay, to Spanish. If they are in English and Spanish, like the example I have here in front of us, make sure that the doctor signs both parts, okay? If they only sign the English part, you could be, and you don't provide a sworn translation, you could be requested to provide it, okay, later on, which is a headache. So make sure that they sign both parts. And something important, I think only in the UK, the doctor needs to be FCDO registered, so registered at the Foreign Ministry of UK Affairs, okay, so that the signature of the doctor can be apostille. So this medical certificate, if you're applying with a UK doctor, if you're providing a UK doctor signature, it needs to be apostille for the UK. That's very important. This is not the case in the US or Canada, okay, or Australia, for example. You don't need to, okay, but in the UK, it's important that you apostille it, okay, so that's important. There's also the option to use a Spanish doctor, okay, that you can find on Spainguru.es. I put you in contact with a Spanish doctor. The whole process is online. Also in the UK, you get a discount with ZoomDoc using Spainguru, which is also an online service for the UK. But if you use a Spanish doctor, okay, there are several pros and cons, okay. Only one con, but all the rest are pros. The pros is the certificate doesn't need to be apostilled, and it doesn't need to be sworn translated because it's in Spanish, okay. The con is that some consulates have a very strong interpretation, and they require you that you have to be physically present in Spain within Spanish territory when the certificate has been issued, okay. It is a short list of consulates that have this interpretation. Among them, for example, Manchester, although lately they have been accepting also medical certificates from Spanish doctor without any requirements. But for example, Lisbon, San Francisco, New York had problems with this, but Miami was accepting them. Recently, Toronto was accepting them. London, Edinburgh accepting Spanish doctor certificates without any issues. So if you are interested in using a Spanish doctor, you can always fill the form on Spainguru.es and ask the doctor, mentioning your consulate, and the doctor will tell you, yes, it's working, or no, better not. Okay. In the case of the US, as we said, you don't need to apostille it, but you need to make it look official. So they will require you that you print this certificate with the doctor's official letterhead, and it has a stamp with the signature, so it looks official, basically, okay? Frequently asked question: my doctor won't sign the medical certificate template. What can I do? Change doctor. Okay, so get another doctor. In the US, also, some people go to urgency services and they bring the printed paper and they will obtain some signature, okay, or use a Spanish doctor eventually if you don't have any other option in that case, etc. So for the UK, my doctor is not FCDO registered. Is his certificate valid? No, unfortunately not. Needs to be registered with the FCDO in the UK, and you have to obtain an apostille, okay, for that certificate, okay? All right, so let's continue. And this is a slide where basically it puts into one single place everything that I said. Basically, apostilles for the medical certificate in the UK, not needed for anywhere else, and the possibility to use a Spanish doctor elsewhere, depending on the hard interpretations or not of the specific consulates. Now, this is someone who reported in Spainguru's community Facebook group that in Chicago got required to get an apostille for the medical certificate. This is absolutely crazy, and it's an isolated case. The way they solved it is to print it, bring this medical certificate signed by the doctor to a notary. They got the notary to sign it, and then they got an apostille for the notary signature, and then they submitted this. But this is, there are hundreds of applicants for non-lucrative visa every month. And this is the first time that I hear it and see it, and I hope that it is the last time. But since you are part of the Spainguru family, I have to bring it to your attention so it doesn't surprise you if you are in this situation, which is absolutely unlikely, and only if you're applying at Chicago. Okay, now let's talk about the clean criminal background check. This is normally the document that takes the longest to obtain. Sometimes not the document itself, but the apostille after it takes a long time as well. It must be squeaky clean during the last 5 years, okay? And in the UK, it is called the ACRO, the police check. Will need an apostille and sworn translation, okay? Usually has a 6-month validity. Always check these time frames because I could be wrong. FBI background check needs to have a federal apostille and a sworn translation, and has normally also a 6-month validity. Check with your consulate and BLS office, okay? And let's go with the frequently asked question. Am I still eligible with records on my background check? The answer is yes, but it depends how serious they are. If you serve conviction time, if there were violent crimes, blood crimes, etc., even if they happened decades ago, you could be denied, okay? It is very sure that you're going to be denied, okay? So if you're in that situation, it happened a long time ago, there could be it could be an option that you go through an expungement process. You delete those records because enough time has passed and they should be taken down from your police check. But this usually takes a long time, so you need to plan very well. And if you're in this situation, always go with legal help that you can find on Spainguru.es. Now, if you have some misdemeanors like driving under the influence, smoking pot outside of university when you were 25 and you're now 60, stuff like that usually doesn't pose any problem, okay? But always, if you have anything in your records, try to get legal advice on that. Maybe just by a consultation, but always with immigration lawyers that are very expert with your consulate where you're applying from, okay? Am I still eligible with a no live trace? Yes, you are, but they will require you to obtain an extra report from the ACRA office where the report states exactly what is underlying that no live trace. They want to know what happened, okay? Can I expedite the background check federal apostille? No, you can't. After 2020 COVID, you cannot expedite it, but you can use private services. Now I have a service on Spainguru that can get it in as short as 10 days. Okay, so of course, it is a private service, but you have that option if you are in a rush. Definitely go on Spainguru.es services tab and you will find that service. Okay, can I notarize the background check and use state apostille instead in the US? No, that's a rejection. Use always federal apostille. Where can I have my fingerprints taken in the US? You can have them scanned at a USPS office, like post office, or also private channelers. Okay, and what if my fingerprints are illegible? And also, sorry, you can do it in your house. You can request a form with a space where you can, put your fingerprints using ink, okay, and send it in a very analogical way into a snail mail envelope and send it to the FBI. But I don't recommend you doing so. The best is to get your fingerprints scanned. It will be much faster to get the federal background check, and you will save time. And make sure that you'll not get any rejections because of wrongly doing the form. What if my fingerprints are illegible? Send me an email to hello@spainguru.es and I will point you in to the right direction in order to solve that. Some screenshots from the community. People were talking that the aggro in the UK was taking about 5 to 6 weeks in order to receive it, and in Canada it's taking very short, and it's also taking only 10 days to apostille. So great news for Canadian nationals applying for the non-lucrative visa. Now let's talk about the proof of not working, okay? And it's very, very hard to really explain this into a concise way because it is also a blurry situation. The non-lucrative visa is also called a retirement visa because it's, most of people just choose to retire in Spain and they are receiving a pension, they are no longer working, and that's the easiest case, okay? Like consulates will see this situation and they will say, perfect, this person will not go back to work, that's for sure, okay? They want to make sure of that. So in that situation, that you are fine. Okay, so if you're working, most of the consulates will require you to quit, okay, and present, for example, in the UK, a P45, in the US, a resignation letter, termination letter from employer, both translated and notarized. And if you're freelancers in the US, notarized affidavit promising not to work, and in the UK, a letter from HMRC, an accountant stating having ceased trading and the register for self-employment. Okay, now, the frequently asked question, should I quit before I get the visa? Okay, and depending on where you're applying, this is going to be possible or not, or they are going to be more open to it or less open to it, okay? We're going to talk about that in the next slides, okay? Is renting out a property considered a job? No, but size matters. If you have one property and you're renting long-term, no, it's not active income. But if you have 5 properties and you Airbnb them, it could be to be considered a job, okay, a business. And if you don't have a property manager that is taking care of the daily operations, it could be considered to be active income, okay? So be careful. If you have doubts about how it could be considered, well, get advice and see how you present that situation. Is investing in stocks considered active income? No. Can I volunteer while on an NLV? Yes, as long as you don't get paid for anything. Okay, no problem. I actually recommend it because it will help you. It will help you feeling at home once you're in Spain. You will help others. You will learn more Spanish. Okay, and your life will be more fulfilled if you help others via volunteering. But definitely don't get paid for it. Now, still working at the time of application. As I said, it is a bit of a blurry situation, and many people have said and promised, like showing papers from HR or promising, like, if you give me the visa, if you grant me the visa, I promise to quit my job upon granting of this visa, etc., etc. But not all the consulates are receptive with this situation. Okay, and in the UK, they're quite adamant, they're quite demanding about the P45. Okay, this is the situation in the UK. And someone says, looks like a bit of a potluck if they accept a letter from HR department in place of a P45 if working to the last minute. Okay, and this, I think, summarizes the situation in the UK. Recently, there was someone asking on the right, like, can I just quit after if I get my visa granted for Manchester? And still the answers were not very clear in the community. They were not very clear. Many people said that they were asked to provide the P45. This is the best you can do in the UK. But in the US, they are more open to this situation. For example, DC Consulate says that, you can show a letter of termination from the employer stating that the applicant will no longer work for that company, or a sabbatical year acceptance letter for the employer. This is crazy, right? Termination letter must be in Spanish, etc., etc. For the Los Angeles Consulate, now BLS, they will accept an authorized letter of intent that states your plan on quitting upon obtaining the visa before leaving for Spain. But very, very recently, this Spainguru community member said that he was planning to renounce, to quit the job. So he submitted a letter from his employer stating that retirement date was going to be a little bit in the future. But before the visa start date that he was going to request, and the BLS officer didn't want to take the non-lucrative submission. Okay, so this is a new thing happening here at Houston, which can be very, very picky, but it's something to have in mind. If you're in this situation, in which you are working at the very last minute, again, go with a lawyer. Like, I highly recommend you doing so. Okay, just to save some headaches. As I said, the consulates want to really make sure that you're not going to be working later on. So all this can cause a lot of friction. And I'm going to talk about a case of a Venezuelan national applying at the Buenos Aires consulate who got his non-lucrative visa denied because he showed activity on LinkedIn, some sort of activity. Okay, and he appealed this, went to court to Spain, and Spain court said that the consulate was right because he was showing activity in his LinkedIn, right? So this is how crazy the consulates can get when they have doubts about you working or planning to work before giving you the non-lucrative visa. Okay, now let's talk about marriage birth certificates and non-married couples. Married couples need a valid and updated certificate. Okay, so if you married in 1975, you need to get a new original copy that is valid, usually between 3 or 6 months, depending on the consulate. Okay, if you're planning to apply with children, you will need birth certificates to prove that they are your children, usually between 3 to 6 month validity, unless stated otherwise. Again, new original copies. Non-married couples can apply, but after May 20th, they made sure to establish how non-married couples were going to be accepted. Now, there are strong case versus weak case. If you show that you are legal partners, you have a strong case to be accepted as a couple, even if you're not married. Okay, if you have 1 year cohabitation, you have a strong case. You prove that. If you have children together, maybe you don't need the full year in cohabitation, but you have a strong case. Okay, to prove that. And if you can't show anything of this, it seems that you will not be able to be considered to be a couple. Therefore, if you plan to apply, maybe you have to apply as 2 main applicants, raising the financial threshold. The certificates that we mentioned, like marriage certificate, birth certificates, legal partnerships, they need to be apostilled in the country that issued them and sworn translated. Okay, and sometimes this thing takes longer than the police checks. If you got married, for example, in Cyprus, if you got married in Trinidad and Tobago or in South Africa, and your children were born there, because you need to get renewed, updated certificates, and that takes a long time also to apostille, etc., etc. Okay. Another question that arises: people applying from Canada, they said, that if you read the documents, the requirements from Canadian consulates, they would say, like, if you got married in Canada, you don't need to show an apostille, but, and people are being accepted with that, but be careful with that. lawyers will highly recommend you to get an apostille, even though if the Canadian consulates tell you that it's not necessary. So be careful with that. This is how ambiguous it can get, but you want to save headaches. Now, another thing, if you got married at an European member country, this was the case of a British who was married in Greece, said that there is an EU regulation saying that if you apply for a visa for another EU member country, you don't need to apostille the documents, official documents from other EU member countries. No, in fact, that in practice, you need to get the apostille for that Greek or EU member marriage certificate. Always get an apostille for your marriage certificates and birth certificates if you don't want to go with having hiccups along the way. Now, what about adult children and ascendants? Unfortunately, after the new regulation, they cannot be dependents any longer. Okay, so adult children are your children over 18 years old. Unfortunately, with the NLV, you cannot bring any adult children or ascendants. Okay, and they need to apply for themselves, by themselves, as main applicants as of May 20th, 2025. This is not the case of the digital nomad visa. You can still bring your family regardless of their age, but they go with by different laws. Okay, so unfortunately, the NLV just got more restricted after May 20th. 2025 in this sense. And this is the Article 61 that explains all this that I just said. And I mentioned so many times already sworn translations, but what are the sworn translators? Sworn translators are accredited by the Spanish Ministry of Foreign Affairs. No one else can accredit a sworn translator from Spain. No one else. This is important, okay? It doesn't matter if they are like, oh, I am the associate of the American Translator Association or whatever. No. You need to be appointed by the Spanish Ministry of Foreign Affairs to be a sworn translator. You need to pass a very difficult exam to become certified, and each sworn translator will have a unique registration number that you can find online just to check if there are sworn translators or not. Their sworn translations are accepted by all Spanish institutions, including consulates, and are done remotely. This is very important, and signed with a legally valid e-signature. So no physical mail is needed. You don't need to wait to receive the physical copy or send your physical copy anywhere. You just scan your original document, you contact the Spanish sworn translator, and you arrange the delivery time, the price per page, and you pay, you receive your scanned document with a stamp, with a legal valid stamp, and you print that and you submit that document to the consulate, okay? The original document and the sworn translation, and eventually also the apostille as well, right? So yeah, no physical mail is needed. And frequently asked question, can I use any translator from the American Translator Association? No. And I mentioned this because Miami and Los Angeles, they mentioned this association, and it has nothing to do with Spanish sworn translators, so it is very misleading. Of course, there are Spanish sworn translators that can potentially be part of that association, okay? There's nothing against it. But being part of this association doesn't make you a sworn translator, okay? So obviously you can find sworn translators on Spainguru.es. Sorry for that. On Spainguru.es, and sworn translators that are very used to deal with non-lucrative visa applications. So they have very competitive prices at around 40 euros per page, depending on complexity. But the usual documents are usually that price, and they're very, very used to applications for non-lucrative visa. Can a sworn translator work with several language pairs? No, they only work with one language pairs. For example, English, Spanish, Spanish, English. Okay, but if you want different language pairs because you got married in Germany, for example, and you need to translate from Germany, you need to engage with another one. Okay. In any case, on Spainguru, you can find the first link is a company that will put you in contact with any language pair sworn translations. Okay. How much do sworn translation cost? As I said, around 40 euros per page. What comes first, apostille, then sworn translation? So I will tell you, there's no clear answer to this. There is the safest way to do it, and there is the way that most people do. Okay, you get your FBI background check original, right? You scan it, you send it to Sworn Translate, and then the physical FBI background check, you send it to apostille. All this at once. You receive by mail your sworn translation, you receive your apostille and your FBI background check physically. You print the sworn translation, you put all together, and this is what you submit. This is what most people do. Lawyers recommend also sworn translating the apostille as well. Okay, there's been rejections because of not having that one sworn translated, unfortunately. So it is up to you, your appetite for risk, but this is what most people do, and this is what lawyers recommend. Okay, another $1 million question is like, should I sworn translate all my bank statements at 40 euros per page, even sometimes more because it is a complex document? And these are the answers. Okay, this is not legal advice. This is what people in the community have said. Okay, these were like dozens of people who answered, and 77% of people said that they didn't translate their sworn translation, their bank statements, because they were in English. I understand that they were in English. If it happens that you have your money in I don't know, Arab bank or Chinese bank, and the documents come not in English, I don't know. I would go with sworn translation, but their English bank statements, 77% of them, they didn't sworn translate them, but 17% of applicants, they chose to sworn translate the summary pages at the very least, so pretty high number. Only 3% sworn translated everything, and many lawyers, for example, Stern Abogados, they have their in-house sworn translator, so they sworn translate everything, and it's included in the price. So that the consulate just receives everything sworn translated, and this is impossible. There's no friction in this. Okay, no possibility of rejection by any means because of lack of sworn translations. But of course, if you plan to sworn translate everything by yourself, it could be costly. Therefore, many people choose not to, or just sworn translate maybe the most important things that explain the financial situation. And I'm mentioning here Spainguru's partners from legal and immigration. And if you want to watch some more videos, we have here some frequently asked questions video by Ainhoa Manero and also Sofia Mejail from CABR Relocation Solutions that I highly recommend you watching. Okay. Remember that there is a Q&A session at the end of this presentation. And if you happen to you had to leave earlier and you think that the information I have shared so far is valuable for you or could be valuable for any others, please leave a review on Trustpilot. It really makes my day. This is an absolutely free webinar. And, the only thing I would kindly ask you if you can leave a nice review out there. It really, really helps me, and it will help others find this content online. You can do it there on the top. There's a green bar with a red button. You can click there, and it will redirect you to Trustpilot, and it only takes 5 seconds of your time. Now let's go back to the presentation. And now we're talking about during the application process. There's been some changes now, but first of all family members must apply. Consider that you have to apply in person, especially if you're dealing with BLS, okay, and pickup of your passports. Sometimes they will send them to your home. Some consulates will only do this process by mail, for example, Panama. Some consulates use a combination or give you the option to do it by mail or in person. And now the NLV will grant you a year, okay, of validity, right? But it is not very, very clear whether you still have to enter Spain within the first 90 days, okay? And I have recently interviewed Ainhoa Manero about the new 1-year validity and also the 1-year month decision time that is in the regulation. They say like you're gonna get a decision on your non-lucrative visa application only after 1 month that the consulate have submitted your paperwork to the foreign office in the province where you are applying for. And in this video, she answers these questions, okay? So I highly recommend you watching this video. It's a very updated video from this weekend, I think, from Saturday. But long story short, basically, we still don't know very well. The lawyers are asking the authorities don't know very well. We didn't get official answers about this. So consider that even if they give you 1-year validity, be careful. Always plan to enter Spain within the first 90 days of the visa validity. And maybe the reason why they give you 1-year validity is because it's taking a long time to get your residency card. And a lot of people don't get the residency card on time and their visa expires. So they get stuck in Spain without any valid immigration document. They have everything expired. They have their visa expired. They don't have a residency card. So what do? They're stuck in Spain. They cannot really travel and come back, because they're over their 90 days on Schengen. So apparently they wanted to address this, but it's not very clear that you can enter Spain for the validation of your non-lucrative visa after those 90 days. So we're still clarifying that. Watch the video because I made mistakes. I'm not an immigration lawyer, and what's best than listening to legal words from an experienced lawyer out there. So, and this is a community member who just explains this, that the reason why they're giving 1-year validity period. Now, some common mistakes to avoid: not checking the specific consular requirements. Okay, so what common mistakes that could lead to rejection? Not checking the requirements. Okay, just watching YouTube videos, talking with the community and everything. This is great. This is fine. But if you don't check the official requirements, you could be denied. This is very important. So check the requirements in English, in Spanish, the BLS requirements, and also internal requirements that they don't publish anywhere. This is the case of Houston, New York. Okay, sometimes they print stuff, they put it on the wall of the office of BLS. Okay, and they have some extra requirements like some tax forms or something like that that nobody knows, on only people who go to the office take a photo of that and they upload to the Spainguru Non-Lucrative Visa group, saying like, oh, look, Houston is asking for this. Okay, so it's better to go with all that documentation in order to avoid being rejected. Submitting wrong documents, expired documents, wrong chronology, like starting with the easy stuff at the beginning and leaving the hard stuff at the end. Wrong health insurance, okay, potentially reimbursement clauses, or having co-pays, or wrong wording in your certificate of coverage from the insurance, from U.S. insurance. Stuff like that happens all the time. Say that you plan to work, or you don't show enough proof, or you don't convince enough the official in the BLS office or consulate that you are not going to be working. Okay, I think we addressed this in order to convey you the right nuance of the situation about the issue of working or having plans of working when you apply, compared to once you have the non-lucrative visa granted and you work remotely once you're in Spain, right? With the implications that could have for renewal. Let's talk about the timing. How much in advance should I start preparing before moving to Spain? US and Canada and UK start 6 months before your intended date, like latest, okay, from the, say, decision-making phase, okay, and planning. Most consulates retain passports during the processing, so it's important to plan into this. If you plan to travel while the visa is processing, be careful with that. US applicants can get a second passport quite easily, okay, and some consulates may allow applicants. Now, for example, Manchester in the UK, you can fill a form and you can keep your passport, apparently. Okay, this is very new, but not all consulates give you this option, right? To keep your passport while the visa is being processed. And also remember that in the UK, it's very hard to get a second passport, so don't count on that. And sometimes they will give you the option to prepay an envelope in order to avoid the in-person visit when you pick up your passport, okay? Now, how long the process take? These are ballpark figures. Documents preparation, 2 to 3 months. Attending the appointment on the 3rd month, okay, if there is an appointment. Wait for the approval, approximately 2 months. It could be 3. Officially, there is a maximum of 3. Now, goes down to 1 month, but don't count on getting an answer after 1 month. What I know from Sterna Abogados says is that after 1 month, you can go to court if you didn't get a decision. This is what they're telling you. They're not really telling you that you will get a decision only after 1 month. Don't count on that, okay? 10 days period if clarifications and extra documentations are asked by the consulate, okay? You can choose your visa start date in a 90-day window from application date. Now, this gets reduced apparently to 60 days window. So, and you're requested not to apply latest 2 months before your intended entry to Spain, okay? And up to 6 months in advance. This is what the new regulation law says. I don't believe any of this, okay? In practice, this is going to be very, very hard to happen, at least during the first year after this regulation is in place. Maybe in the future, okay, this is happening, but right now it's hard to believe because, of course, the administration tends to be quite slow, and that even if they try to narrow down everything on paper, in practice, this is going to be really, really hard to happen. Officially, you will have 30 days to obtain your residency card or TA card in Spain once you enter Spain under the visa validity, and this plastic card, this residency card, will be valid for a year, and then you will have to renew it if you want. Okay. Now, someone says, you can ask for the visa to be valid for up to 3 months in advance. However, the difficulty I found was finding healthcare company who will work that far out most only do 2. Okay, this is actually like when you start your health insurance policy start. Okay, many companies right now, actually, they only give you 1 month in advance to start it. So you really need to get the health insurance policy very close to the appointment, and you cannot start it very much in advance. And a solution here, use Spainguru's recommended exclusive agent, because he can extend the visa start, the health insurance start date in the future, if that helps you with your process. And here we have some visual slides and how the process is. This is, as I said, it's changing a little bit because of the new regulation, but basically, imagine that you submit on letter A, and every segment is 1 month, okay? So you submit on letter A, and you can choose up to 90 days in the future when you want to start the visa, and maybe the consulate process the visa before that date that you chose, and they can grant you your wish to start during that day. This is what happens in the example. Then they will grant you the visa to start on letter B, okay, sometime 90 days after the application. Once the visa starts, you will get a 1-year visa validity period, okay, really, but it is not clear by immigration authorities that you can enter Spain after 90 days. So keep that in mind. Always plan to enter Spain within 90 days, unless the authorities say that, yeah, you can enter up to 1 year later on, and then I will change the webinar content in order to reflect this. But once we have an official communication on this, right now we stay at 90 days just to be on the safe side. Then you fly to Spain and you enter Spain on letter C within the 90 days, initial 90 days of your visa validity. And once you enter Spain, you have officially 30 days to get your TIE, okay? And once you get your TIE, the TIE will reflect the entry to Spain within the visa validity time, okay? And 1 year after the entry in Spain, within the visa validity time, you will get your expiration date on your residency card, and you can renew your non-lucrative visa starting 60 days prior to the expiration date, and up to 90 days after the expiration date. But no one recommends doing so. Everyone recommends renewing starting 60 days before expiration date for several reasons. This is also another way to see it. Of course, this is an illustration on how the process can be, but things can overlap, things can come before another. So take it with a pinch of salt, especially with the appointments. A lot of people start trying to get the appointment even before they gather documentations, because in many consulates, getting an appointment can be a huge bottleneck. But having said this, first, find your assigned Spanish consulate. Second, check the official requirements of the consulate in English, in Spanish. The BLS consulates also printed requirements in the offices, okay? Remember to check if your consulate uses BLS for the non-lucrative visa processing, okay? All UK consulates do, but not all the US consulates do. Collect necessary documents, okay? And start with the hard ones before, like could be the police check, ACRO, FBI background check, but also could be, marriage certificates from countries, outside the US and UK, and those could take long, especially the apostille and sworn translations. Then obtain the medical certificates, okay, that have a 3-month validity. Remember that documents with a validity needs to be valid at the time of the appointment. Then you will have to apostille and sworn translate the necessary documents, sort out your private health insurance, or obtain the S1 if you're a UK pensionist. Book the appointment. As I said, you could start doing the appointment booking long time before. Attend the appointments, submit your documents, wait for the processing that can take 2-3 months, can take less. Okay, some people report getting their visas only after a week. This is crazy, and sometimes some people, especially now in Manchester, it's taking much longer, like 12 weeks, 13 weeks, more than 3 months. Collect your visa, okay, or receive it in your home, okay, or sometimes you need to travel, and all the family needs to be there for the pickup, depending on the rules of your specific BLS office or consulate. And then you fly to Spain within the visa validity period. You can do it, enter as a tourist before, but that will bring some issues potentially. Once you enter Spain, it is highly recommended that you get an empadronamiento, which is registering your address, the place where you're renting. You need to register it at the home, at the city hall in the city in which you are living, and you will receive a certificate that has a 3-month validity that 90% of police stations or foreign offices will require you to show when you show up for the appointment to get your tarjeta de identidad extranjero or residency card. This is another way to see it as well. This is a Gantt chart where you can see the different time frames for the different categories of things that you need to do. Right? So you can see here that basically every segment is 1 month. So I have here 11 months. So really, you have to allow time for doing all this. Okay, this is the smoothest ways to do it. They can be fastest, of course, but this is, let's say, the easiest way to see that, in my opinion. Police check, marriage certificate, birth certificate, if that applies. You get it. You get a certain validity period. You have to check that validity period. Apostille and sworn translations, financial documents. You get it on the second month. Medical certificates on the second month with a validity period. You get your health insurance right before the appointment. You get the appointment. You start getting it 2 months before. You go to the appointment. You submit your papers. You wait for the processing period, and then you move to Spain within the visa validity period. Okay, this is how it would look. There's the update that I said, okay, I think I mentioned before. So applications must now be submitted no later than 2 months before your planned arrival in Spain, unless exceptional reasons justify a shorter time frame. And you can submit your application as early as 6 months and up to 2 months prior to your intended entry date. And I mentioned already the decision deadline of 1 month from consulate communication. And if you don't hear anything after the communication, it is a default rejection. It's called negative silence. Okay, you have positive and negative silence. For this case, it's a negative silence in which if you don't get any answer, supposedly if you don't get any answer after 1 month, then it means that you are rejected. Okay. This is what the law says. This is what the regulation says. Okay. And here's the screenshot of the article. But as I said, take it with a pinch of salt because authorities are changing as we speak, the way of working, and anything can happen, really, right? So timing, and we're going to go back to taxes. We're going to talk about taxes now. CGT, capital gains tax. If you happen to need to sell your home before moving to Spain, be careful, because if you sell your home and you made a difference by selling it and you move to Spain and you become a Spanish tax resident the same year in which you sold your home, you will be liable to pay capital gains tax in Spain, which can be quite high compared to original countries. Okay, the best way to avoid this capital gains tax, I'm not going to talk about allowances or deductions or specific cases. I'm going to just talk about the strategy to avoid altogether this capital gains tax in Spain, is that you don't become a Spanish tax resident during the same calendar year in which you sell your home. This is the first case scenario on the top. You sell in 2024, you move in 2025 to Spain. Therefore, sell and moving, they fall into different tax years. But if you happen to sell during the same calendar year, be careful. Make sure to spend less than 83 days during the calendar year. Okay, therefore you need to arrive to Spain after July 2nd. Okay, so you sell in March and you move to Spain after July 2nd, you're on the safe side, right? It's not possible to spend more than 183 days during that year, because there's only 182 days until January 1st when the clock goes back to zero. Okay, long story short, you can watch more content about taxes, about how to avoid taxes that shouldn't really apply to you if you time your moving to Spain. I'm not saying you don't pay taxes, but it's, of course, why paying taxes that could be avoided? It doesn't make too much sense to me, especially if in your home countries, in many states in the States, you don't have capital gain taxes. Why moving to Spain and then suddenly find an invoice of 20% of the gains on your home sale? That would be pretty surprising at the very least, right? So be careful. Read about taxes, and as I said, not only immigration but also engage with a tax professional that you can find on Spainguru.es, just to make sure that you take the right decisions while moving to Spain. So taxes and immigration need to align before moving to Spain very, very clearly. And now we're going to talk about after the approval, right? So living in Spain under non-lucrative residence now, hopefully, you arrive to Spain. But there's two ways to arrive, either from outside of Schengen or from inside Schengen. Outside of Schengen, you fly from New York to Barcelona. Okay, you get a Spanish stamp from Spanish authorities at Barcelona airports. Those stamps go on your visa. Perfect. It's validated. But if you fly from New York to Frankfurt, you get a German stamp in your passport anywhere. And then you fly to Barcelona from Frankfurt, and nobody's waiting for you because it's internally borderless. Germany and Spain are part of Schengen, so they didn't get any control. There's no border, let's say, and you don't get the Spanish stamp. So you need that stamp. What happens then? Or, for example, you drive from London to Spain. You cross France. You cross from France to Spain. You don't get any authority. Only in France when you cross the tunnel, right? You need the Spanish stamp. If you don't get it, you need to obtain the Declaración de Entrada, which is a one-page document that I highly recommend you looking online. You print it out. You fill it with your hands, and when you arrive to Spain via another Schengen country, you go to the nearest police station at the airport or near the border, and you tell them to sign it. Okay, you show your boarding pass, or you show that you enter 1 minute ago with the car. They will see it, okay, and get that declaration. Because once you want to get your residency card, they will ask you to prove when you enter Spain. And if you don't have Spanish authorities stamps, anything could happen. Some police officers are very nice, and they will see your boarding passes or train tickets, whatever, and they will, okay, fine, I believe you. But some other police officers may have a bad day and tell you, you need to get out of Schengen and come back. And that has happened, so be careful with that. Always, until we get official answers, respect the 90-day visa validity window, even if you get 1 year granted. Once you enter, these are recommendations. Get a Spanish SIM card. In order to get SMS, when you do procedures with Spanish authorities, you will get SMS that are important. Open a non-resident bank account until you become a resident. That can take time, but you will need to pay your rent. You will need to pay utilities, anything. Okay, so All brick-and-mortar banks offer you the possibility to open a non-resident bank account, obtain an empadronamiento, as we mentioned before, because 90% of police stations, they will require it as proof of address in order to process your TA card. And as we said, you will have 30 days officially to get your TA card. Is the padrón strictly necessary to obtain the TA? There are no appointments to obtain the TA. What should I do? These are frequently asked questions. Now I will quote a lawyer who is part of the Spainguru community, and he says, the TA appointment, in practice, it is not required to get your TA appointment within 1 month. No one does. It's a huge bottleneck. There are no appointments, especially now in Valencia. It's like super hard to get an appointment, okay? Anywhere in the province. They have a huge bottleneck there, okay? And appointments can take up to 6 months without issue, okay? So it's very common that you don't get your residency card for several months. 2 months, 3 months is normal, okay? The sooner to obtain it, the better, but there's no immediate rush, okay? And what about the padrón? Officially, you are required to show proof of address. The best proof of address out there is the empadronamiento, but it's not the only one. You could show Airbnb receipts, Booking.com receipts, rental contract, and many police stations. The larger the police stations, the more open to receive those type of proof of address. But the smaller the police station, the more they lean towards receiving an empadronamiento, which is hard to obtain sometimes. Okay, so be careful. Try to find out if you got an appointment at a smaller police station. Try to find out in advance if you need an empadronamiento or not, if you don't have it, because if they require it and you don't have it, you will lose your time. Okay. Renewal process, how and when to renew. So first, you get 1 year residency, okay? And as we said, the first renewal for 2 more years will start 60 days before expiration date of your TA card and up to 90 days from expiration date. It's best to avoid doing it once it expired. Do it before it expires, okay? And as we said, you will need double the savings in double the time. And it could be passive income, like pension or savings, or a combination of both. And the funds need to be available in an account, okay, when renewing, right? Anywhere in the world, I recently ran a poll where the money was held, okay, and I would say 90% of people had their money and their passive income into US, UK bank accounts, Canada bank accounts with no problems. But some provinces, for example, Valencia and Canary Islands, they will ask you to see activity into a Spanish bank account. So it's important that you find out this also where you're going to renew, because there are regional variations, okay? The second renewal will happen after 3 years. Since you initially entered Spain, you will renew for year 4 and 5, okay? And it will be the same as 2 and 3. Of course, if you move to a different province, maybe there are different requirements, slightly different requirements. And then after 5 years of residency in Spain, you have the possibility to apply for the long-term residence, also known as the permanent residence, with certain requirements as well. Now, renewal process update, and the changes effective from May 20th, 2025, okay? The renewal periods remained fixed at 2 years. There were rumors that there were going to be 4, but they stayed at 2. And the 183-day minimum stay requirements in order to renew, okay? This is something that was included in the new Regulación de Extranjería, okay, Reglamento de Extranjería, or the bylaw, the smaller law, not the main organic law, okay? And many people say that this will align with Spanish tax residency rules, meaning that applicants would become tax residents. The truth is this. The tax year is different than the immigration year. The tax year starts on January 1st until December 31st, and the immigration year starts the day you enter Spain. If you enter Spain on June 1st, 2024, your immigration years is until June 1st, 2025. Okay, so they may overlap, but they may not be different. They may be different. So initially, actually, the answer to the million-dollar question, do I have to become a Spanish tax resident under a non-lucrative residence? The answer is a strong no, you don't need to. Actually, especially the first year. If you time your entry to Spain, you will avoid being a Spanish tax resident, okay? The first 2 years, actually. So always, if that is your plan, okay, engage with immigration lawyers who know their job, have experience with this, and Spanish tax advisors. You can find them on Spainguru.es. Because, of course, a lot of people are telling you, yeah, you need to become a Spanish tax resident immediately, etc. It's not true. It is absolutely not true, okay? Of course, I'm not an immigration lawyer. I'm just repeating what lawyers have said on Spainguru's YouTube channel. You can read and you can watch and listen to that information directly, without me in between, okay? And you will see that this is the situation, right? And why this is the situation? Because there is a legal ambiguity. In the previous Reglamento de Extranjería, the one that is no longer into effect, there was a minimum requirement to stay in Spain in order to renew your non-lucrative visa of 180 days. The Supreme Court ruled that this requirement was illegal, okay, The Congress put something illegal into this law, into the reglamento, because it goes against the very important right, very initial and foremost right of movement of people within the European Union, okay? And they deleted this. They deleted it from the reglamento, okay? Now the Congress insisted again, and they raised the 180-day limit to renew to 183 days, but there is a Supreme Court ruling against this, okay? So it's a matter of time that they delete it, right? So it is legal ambiguity now, because these things take time, but it is very, very, like, if you go to court, you will win this. If they deny you because you didn't stay 183 days in Spain, you go to court and you will win it 100%. 100%. This is what immigration lawyers who know their job say, okay? Many lawyers will tell you, oh, you have to be 183 days, or you deal with visa application companies who are not lawyers, they are paralegals, okay? And they will tell you, because they want to be in the safe side, they don't want to have problems, but they're not going to tell you that all the possibilities that you have, okay? This is very, very important, right? So you're going to be playing by the rules, but you're going to know the rules well if you go with experienced immigration lawyers who know their job and not only know about visa processing, but they know about immigration, and they can tell you the right strategy for your long-term goals in Spain. So yeah, sorry, I get very very obsessed about this because it's very, very important. I see so much content out there saying to you, like, yeah, you need to become a Spanish tax resident, blah, 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 all this, you need to be 183 days. This is what the reglamento says. Like, look, there are 3 powers in Spain, okay? It is still a democracy, and you have 3 powers, and the Supreme Court said that they cannot say to you not to renew your visa if you didn't stay that minimum period, because they need to include this requirement into the main organic law. And in order to do so, the Congress needs to go through more controls. It is a longer process, and they don't want to go through that. So they did this fix, okay, with the tape, and they put this 183-day requirement to stay, which is actually not what the Supreme Court says should be, right? Okay, of course, I'm not a legal advisor. Always check with experienced immigration experts. Now, renewal process, case study. Let's do some maths here. In order to explain you what is the double funding requirements for the renewal process, total funding needed for a couple is 72,000 euros, which is 36,000 euros in 2025, as per the IPREM in 2025, times 2 is $72,000 in 2 years. So you need to prove $72,000 minimum threshold in 2 years, not in 1 year, 2 years. Therefore, imagine this: if the main applicant makes 15,000 euros pension annually, it means that this person will cash in the bank 30,000 euros in 2 years. Right? 15,000 euros the first year and 15,000 euros the second year. That is 30,000 euros in 2 years. So that proves 30,000 euros. So you only have left to prove 42,000 euros. You could provide savings of 42,000 euros, maybe rental income. Okay, as I said, be careful with that. Depending on the region, they will accept or not, because it's an unsafe type of income. Okay, it could be dividends. It could be any other passive income, right? Dividends from a company that you have that you don't actively operate, right? So all that. Yes, but basically, the difference between passive income counts differently as if it is savings, okay? Documentation requirements for the renewal: ongoing private medical insurance coverage or public healthcare system coverage, but no gaps in between, updated passport copies for both individuals, and ongoing health coverage, as we said, and no police records. A lot of people get driving records because of driving under the influence in Spain, and they could be denied, right? Local town hall registration: you need to submit your empadronamiento for the renewal, okay, in most cases. So this is also something to have in mind. Now, how long do you need to spend in Spain to maintain your residence, and how long to obtain the long-term residence or citizenship? LLD renewal, we said, it is ambiguous, okay? In the reglamento, they tell you minimum 183 days per year, per calendar year, not tax year, per calendar year, okay? But there's a Supreme Court saying that it shouldn't be like that. So we're in these ambiguous times. For long-term residence, if you want to apply for the long-term residence after 5 years of residency in Spain, you cannot be outside of Spain more than 10 months in 5 years, okay? Those 10 months don't need to be consecutive, but they cannot be more than 6 months at once, okay? If you don't comply with this minimum stay for the long-term residence, potentially, I said, because not everywhere, you could apply for a third renewal of your non-lucrative visa called extraordinary renewal that not all the regions allow. For example, Galicia doesn't allow it, but I don't have a clear list of who allows it and who doesn't. And if you plan to apply for citizenship, And this is especially for dual passports, for people who have passport from Latin American countries, Philippines, etc., who can apply after only 2 years of legal residency in Spain. You cannot be outside of Spain more than 3 months per year, and not 6 months in 2 years. Only maximum 90 days per year. Okay, I just was asked this today in the group. If you're a holder of a temporary residency, like the non-lucrative residence. If you're a holder of a long-term residence and you plan to apply for the Spanish citizenship, you could not be outside of EU more than 1 year consecutively, or no more than 30 months in 5 years. All right. Now let's talk about the most common pathways to get a work permit. Okay, and we're talking about work permit is working for a Spanish company in Spain. Okay, so we're not talking about like remote work for non-Spanish companies. This is let's say the most common pathways. Of course, when you get your long-term residence, that comes with a work permit. Okay, so after 5 years, if you apply for the long-term and they give you the long-term residence, you have work permit. But if you plan to transition to work permit before that happens, these are some of the common pathways. Okay, the first one is working for your own business. You have a business plan, they approve it. Okay, you need to be approved, and this is very important that you understand it. After 1 year of residence, this is the best way to do it. After 1 year of non-lucrative residence, you renew your NLV. And after you have the renewal, you apply for a modification of this non-lucrative residence into a work permit. Okay? This is the best way to do it. This is the highest chance to do it. But I'm not saying it's automatic. It's not that after 1 year under non-lucrative visa, you have the right to request for a work permit. No, it doesn't work like that. You need to comply with certain requirements, and this could be difficult for some people. Okay, for some other people, it's not difficult, okay, but it could be. So it's not automatic. Cuenta propia and cuenta ajena. Cuenta propia is you have your own business plan. It needs to be approved by authorities, okay? The other option is cuenta ajena. You have a company that is ready to sponsor you. They send you a job offer, okay? And the third one is a lot of people are doing this transition from non-lucrative to digital nomad visa, which is controversial because you need to prove that you have been working remotely at the very least for 3 months before applying, which is of course controversial because supposedly you shouldn't be working remotely under a non-lucrative residence. But I told you it is a great area. Now let's talk about the pathway to Spanish citizenship after living in Spain under this visa or any other residency. Remember that student visa is not a residency; it is a permiso de estancia. It doesn't count for citizenship. Now, countries in gray, like USA, Canada, Australia, France, etc., all those countries need to spend 10 years legally resident in Spain in order to be able to apply for Spanish citizenship. But Spain has agreements with Latin American countries, Portugal, Andorra, Guinea Equatorial, and Philippines. And these nationals or dual passport holders can apply after only 2 years of legal residency. So it is very interesting to have that in mind. There's so many casuistics about this, but we're not going to go through that because it's only for one specific webinar, okay? But I just want you to know that. Now we're finishing. We're going to go to the Q&A session now. But first of all, remember you can use Spainguru for absolutely free. Join the newsletter, watch the YouTube videos, read the blog posts, and join the Facebook group with 21,000 members already, the biggest, largest non-lucrative visa group out there, where you can write your questions, read others' experience, etc. Also, if you plan to move to Spain, there's the new section called Move to Spain Checklist. You go on Spainguru.es, you scroll down a little bit, and you can go through that section that will tell you step by step what to do and what services or what resources you have available in order to check every single step until you get to Spain and even beyond. It's a very interesting thing, and it's absolutely free to check it out, and it can help you to put together and in a clear way your project to move to Spain. And if you plan to engage with professionals, I have personally vetted every single professional on Spainguru.es. I have been recommending them for several years. Our reviews are outstanding, so you're in good hands. So you can find immigration experts, tax advisors, financial planners, health insurance that are compliant for an NLV, medical certificates for UK doctors, for Spanish doctors, sworn translations, apostille services in US and UK, bank accounts, money transfer services, very important, property rentals with discounts, mortgages. Okay, if you plan to purchase property in Spain, you can do it via a mortgage. So these are mortgage agents, brokers specialized in foreign income or savings. So yeah, you're in good hands. Take a look because I'm sure you can find many services out there that could be useful. Bonus, before we go to Q&A session, how many people use professional help? About 50% in the group use professional help. versus 50% who did it themselves. And I asked, are you happy? Do you think it was money well spent? 80% of people said that using professional help was a good investment, whereas about 20% said no, it would have been okay to do it themselves. Of course, these are people who didn't necessarily use Spainguru's partners. I'm sure that if they use Spainguru's partners, it would have been 100% satisfaction, of course. Of course, I'm joking. There's no perfection in life. But anyways, let's connect. Let's stay in touch. hello@spainguru.es. You can send me an email anytime. I always answer my emails. And yeah, join the group, watch the YouTube channel and newsletter. Remember, the content of this webinar is for information purposes only and is not legal advice. The requirements listed here are not official. Please check the specific considered requirements. And now we go to the Q&A session, finally. And if you have to go home or leave the webinar, etc., please don't do it before leaving a review on Trustpilot. On the top, there's a green bar with a red button. It will redirect you to Trustpilot. It really makes a difference for me and for anyone who wants to find this content. If you think it is useful to the content I'm sharing with you today and can help others, not only yourself, please leave a nice review out there. And I will really, really be very grateful to you. And I will be crossing my fingers for your non-lucrative visa application. Now, let's go to the questions. Thank you, everyone, for joining today, first of all, and for the ones who are asking questions as well. Can we apply for the TA appointment from outside of Spain upon receiving an LV visa? Not that I think of. Not that I think of. That's a great question, but not that I think of. Could be wrong, of course. I'm not an immigration lawyer. There's no legal advice. Great question to join the Spainguru community and ask it directly and see what happens, what people have done. I never heard that happening. Okay, in the years that I am reading, never heard anyone saying that could be possible. Okay, like I see this for the digital nomad visa, that people get their NIE in advance, they travel to Spain, they get their clave to apply for the digital nomad visa, and then they come back, they get the documents, etc., and then they arrive to Spain, and the next day, being in Spain, they apply for the digital nomad visa. So this is the kind of thing that I read, but never heard of anyone being able to apply for a TA card before being in Spain with a non-lucrative visa. Now, let's see the next question. The BLS Spain Miami website always shows no available appointment dates. How can I get an appointment? Keep on trying. Unfortunately, join the community. You will see that people are in your same situation. A lot of people were saying for Miami lately that even like searching for appointments in Miami was helpless. So people did the walk-in appointments. But as recent as last week, I was reading that no more walk-in appointments were available or offered at Miami BLS office as early as last week. Okay, so I haven't been reading that before that, but now if you ask the community for people who are applying as we speak, potentially you will receive those bad news, because before apparently you could pay $80 and just walk in and go there and submit. But I don't think it is no longer an option. But of course, I'm not there just to see it for myself. My knowledge is community-based and asking lawyers, etc. And this is very, very new. And it takes some time to process the information and to contrast it to make sure that it's real, that is valid. Okay, so this is what I'm hearing. These are the rumors. So yeah, my answer would be just like keep on trying different times of the day, clear out the cache of your browser. There's so many tricks that people do, but yeah, it takes time, and unfortunately it's a huge bottleneck. Eric, if I am a US citizen and my long-term married partner is Philippine citizen, can she and her child apply under my NLV and married? So as I said, you have some you have some requirements to prove for the unmarried couples now. Okay, either legal partners. Okay, you need to prove via that, or cohabitation, having children together, right? So which is but it is her child, so it's not very clear. So I don't know exactly what is the situation, but it is possible to apply as an unmarried partner. Doesn't matter really the passport you're holding, but the fact that you prove that the married couple is a legal married couple, as per what the Spanish authorities see. Okay, what the Spanish authorities will consider. So you need to make a strong case, and now it is pretty clearly defined how you make a strong case, which is either showing legal partnership certificate, sworn, translated, and apostilled, or proof cohabitation for 1 year, or if it's less than 1 year, you have children together, okay, together. So yeah, this would be it. But of course, this is not legal advice. Please check the official requirements and potentially engage with a lawyer. I would, in my opinion, if I was in your case, at least a consultation just to make sure you go on a sure shot to this non-lucrative visa application. Okay, especially when you come with like this a bit different case. Not saying more difficult, but a bit different, because the common case is like retiring. Okay, you're a UK couple who are retired, who are no longer working, who are receiving a pension. This is straightforward. Do it yourself. It's easy. Just be organized. That's it. But if you come with different citizenships, you apply from different consulates, you are an unmarried couple, you need to make the case, there is a higher potential of rejection, it's better to go with legal help. In my opinion, that's what I would do. I think it's money well spent if you are into a not so straightforward situation. Okay, now let's go. You mentioned that investing in stocks are still okay, passive. What about forex trading? I would assume it's the same, but I don't know very well. Forex trading. This is like stock investing, I assume, but I'm not 100% sure. It is along those lines. Okay, so like yeah, you can invest. That's what I understand. Invest in anything, right? It's not like you, in order to obtain your non-lucrative visa, you have to stop investing. No, you can have your investments, all right? But if there is the slightest doubt that you're doing active income, okay, this could be potentially a problem for your application. Okay, so yeah. If my partner is in Spain under an NLV, can they switch to a work visa at a later date if they want to work? What I understand is that they could, if they comply with the requirements of a modification. Okay, but being dependent, the question would be, is like, being dependent, is that a problem? And also, if in your case you have a Filipino, a married couple, but it's a Filipino national, potentially can apply for the citizenship after only 2 years, which of course comes with a work permit, right? After only 2 years. No legal advice, of course, like everything I say. Yulduth, do you have an experience with applicants residing in the UAE and applying for NLV from there? Well, I've seen people writing in the group. People are writing all the time. What I remember about the UAE is that they are not part of the Hague Convention. Therefore, their documents cannot be apostilled, but they have certain certifications that are special to UAE, and authorities know about this. So you have that specifics, okay? The Hague Convention, for example, Canada wasn't part of the Hague Convention until last year, I believe, early last year. So, and Bolivia, for example, not part. So these countries, in order to legalize documents for Spain, they need to have their specifics, okay? Because there are authorities, of course, who provide documents in UAE, and you need to obtain certain legalization that are proper to UAE. So you need to find out. Join the Spainguru Facebook group and for the non-lucrative visa, because there are people applying for UAE right now as we speak, and potentially you can help each other. And or, of course, go with legal help. Have you worked with anyone applying for an NLV from New Zealand? First of all, I never worked with anyone applying for any NLV. I don't do processing myself directly, okay? But I am 24/7 on the Non-Lucrative Visa Facebook group. I receive a lot of things. I interview lawyers, so I'm not a lawyer or a visa processor. So I could safely say that I know a lot, but I don't work directly doing the processing. I always forward people who want, like, Bruno, can you do my non-lucrative visa? And I will forward you to my vetted professionals who are extremely experienced and they have time for that, and that's their job. So yeah, basically, I've seen people who apply from New Zealand recently, someone in the group, for example, but it's not very common. It's not too many people because it's, I don't know, smaller population. There's more Australians. I also have content out there, and I'm gonna be publishing a video about applying from Australia, but of course it doesn't have to be the same way. But yeah, people apply from New Zealand, of course. Yeah. If my social security benefits exceed the minimum amount, do I need to show a bank account balance? Does the social security benefit letter need to be apostilled? All right, so first of all, I understand that the social security benefit should not be apostille, first of all, in my opinion. Okay, I haven't heard that happening. Okay, potentially, if you're gonna go all the way, you can notarize it and then apostille the notarization of the Social Security benefit. Now, a lot of people don't want to show more funds. For example, I'm making €500,000, but I only need to prove 30,000. Okay, as a main applicant, round numbers. What I say is this: is like with Spanish bureaucracy, it's better to be safe on the safe side rather than close to the limit. Okay, so it is a blurry answer I'm gonna give you, unfortunately. Like if you are very close to the limit, it's better that you show a little bit more, just to eliminate any place for doubts. Okay, so that's my opinion. You don't need to show everything you have. No, definitely not. But don't show something that is close to the limit if you can. That would be my answer. Can a long-term partner be considered as a couple, or must the couple be legally married? No, it can be non-married couples, but you have to comply with the requirements in order to be considered a couple. If my partner has a child, can I also include the child of my long-term under my visa? So you need to, if the child needs to be under 18, okay, and needs to be financially dependent, and you need to prove that the child has not been married, is part of the same family, okay, and in the case in which the child is not you together, I don't know exactly what circumstances or consequences that can be. Unfortunately, I don't know. I've never been asked this, or I never seen this question being asked before. Maybe you could be the first one to ask it in the group. You can always do it anonymously, okay? Your name don't have to show there, and maybe people can tell you what they did in the same situation, potentially. But again, I would engage with a lawyer, Eric. This is probably a better question for tax session tomorrow. But if I own a home in the US and sell it before you move to Spain, in order to buy a home in Spain, do you have to pay tax on the amount of the sale or the capital gain on the sale? So it's capital gains tax. Yeah. So you pay taxes on the capital gains only the difference that you made. Yes, this is important. So 2 questions. Let's read again. Do you have to pay tax on the amount of the sale? No, only the capital gains or the capital gains on the sale. Yeah, I think I answered you. So more or less, it's a progressive tax bracket that goes from 19% to 30%, depending on the amount of gains. People report that average, they will pay 22% on the capital gains tax. So if you bought for 100K and you sold for 200, long ballpark figures, you will pay only for 100, okay? The difference that you made, only if you made money, of course, if you made a gain. And if you're a Spanish tax resident, that you can avoid by timing your move. If I have a non-taxable government pension under 70,000 euros in the US, will that pension income be taxable in Spain? So as of the Spain-US double taxation treaty, government pensions are not taxable in Spain, as far as I understand. You need to make sure that it is considered to be a government pension, okay? And you need to check always with the tax advisor what I'm saying. But yeah, if it's a government pension, public pension, it is not taxable, can be not taxable in Spain, okay? Anyway, what about New Zealand and tax? It's a very open question. I don't know exactly what you want me to answer, sorry. I don't understand. What about New Zealand and tax? All fine? All fine with New Zealand and tax? All fine. And that was the last question, right? So, Newcom L, you can always write something now in the chat if I missed something, just to clarify what the question is. I really appreciate, guys, that you made it today to the webinar. It's almost more than 2 hours here talking. Sorry for probably creating you a headache with so much information, but yeah, it is. I try to go deep in my webinars, and I don't want to sugarcoat anything. I want to tell you the things as I perceive them and prepare you for surprises. So always, that's what you're gonna find with Spainguru and with myself. You can always reach me out on at hello at spainguru.es. I'll do my best to answer you as quick as possible and answer your questions. If I can't, at least I'm going to point you to resources, free resources, and also vetted professionals that may help you. And yeah, again, stay in touch. Thank you so much. And I see you around. I'm going to send you a recording soon today. All right. Take care and have a wonderful week. Stay in touch. Bye-bye.